You have to understand that politicians in the Western democracies are actively working against the best interests of the citizens, the best interests of you. I'm talking, of course, in Western Europe and North America, see? And also some countries in South America at this point. What's going on is that the left-wing politicians and the right-wing politicians, for different reasons that I'll go into in just a moment, have realized that they are actively working against the best interests of the citizens. Or let me phrase that. See, their actions that are beneficial to these politicians are bad for the citizens. Let me explain. Take a left-wing politician. See, a left-wing politician, he used to be in favor of the working man, the worker. And so the left-wing politician helped the worker unionize and collective bargaining and all that stuff. And what happened to that worker, to that unionized worker? Well, he did very well, of course. Yeah, his standard of living rose. That's what happened. It happened in Western Europe, it happened in North America, and some countries of South America. The left-wing politicians' objective to raise up the working man worked. And because of it, what did the working man start to do? He started voting for the right-wing candidate. That's what he started to do. Yeah, because what does a left-wing politician represent? He represents change. He wants to change the system to improve the lot of this, that, the other. It doesn't matter. But what about the right-wing politician? What does the right-wing politician want to do? He wants stability. He doesn't want to change things. And so when the working man's situation started to improve, what did he want? Did he want more change? No! He wanted stability. He wanted things to be even, status quo. So he started voting for the right-wing candidate, not the left-wing candidate who had gotten him the union, who had gotten him collective bargaining, who had gotten him social welfare and whatnot. No. No longer for that left-wing guy. He wanted to vote for the right-wing guy so that things would stay the same, because the way things are going were pretty good. So he didn't want any change. You see? And so the left-wing politician felt betrayed by what the working class were doing. They were voting for the right-wing guy. Yeah. Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, yeah. The left-wing parties hated the working man, the working classes, and realized that by having helped the working classes to achieve a middle-class life, a materially prosperous life, they'd lost their voter base. And so they had to get a new voter base. And how would they do this? By importing voters. Of course, that's what they did. They imported voters from the Middle East, from Africa, from wherever it took. Any minority group. And they started identifying with minorities, not with the working classes. Because left-wing parties before used to identify with the working classes. But after the working classes abandoned them, the left changed to focus on minorities. And they wanted to expand the number of minorities, more diversity and inclusiveness, more refugees. Why? Because with more refugees, more minorities, there were more voters. Because minorities tend to vote as a bloc, especially immigrant groups. Yeah, immigrant groups, especially religious immigrant groups, they tend to vote whatever the head religious official tells them to vote. And it happens with Muslims, it happens with Buddhists, it happens with all of them. See? And so the left-wing parties realized that if they focused on minorities, especially religious minorities, and brought more of them in, they'd get more votes. They'd make up for the votes that they'd lost of the working classes who had become turncoats and started voting for right-wing candidates. And these left-wing votes, you didn't even have to convince them very much, because they would vote in bloc. Like, for instance, in the UK, Pakistanis vote as a bloc for Labour. And it's something like 90% of the Pakistanis will vote for Labour because their imam tells them to. You see? That's what's going on. And that's why the left-wing parties realize that bringing in more minorities, bringing in more diversity and inclusiveness nonsense would improve their electoral chances. They'd get power because of it. Yeah, they'd get power by importing foreigners. That's basically what happened. They would get more political power by importing foreigners. That was the left's calculation, and that is what they did. And there's really no other way to look at it. But that's on the left. What about the right? Oh yeah, the right-wing politicians, they're bastards, just like the left-wing politicians. Because you see, the right-wing politicians, who are they? They are second-tier people. See? On the left-wing politicians, they're always going to be top-tier people, because on the left, the intellectuals think that power comes from politics, from political leadership. And so the best people on the left go into politics because they aspire to power. But on the right, where do people go? The best people. They go to private enterprise. They go to business for themselves. They set up their own businesses or go pursue a career in some whatever it is, right? The best people are in the private sector. Who among the right-wingers goes into public office? The second-raters, the guys who couldn't cut it in the private sector. Those are the guys who aspire to political office on the right. And who are they beholden to? These second-raters. They are beholden to the guys who will give them money for their campaign. The rich guy. The rich guy, the guy who's actually above them, smarter than them, more successful than them, more money than them, controlling them. And what does a rich guy want to do? He wants to make more money. And how do you make more money? How do you make more profits? Well, you can either sell more of a product, or you can lower the cost of that product and sell it at the same price. Those are the only two ways that you can make more money. And how can you lower the cost of something while maintaining its price? Well, you have cheaper labor. And so how do you get cheaper labor? By importing it. Yeah, the right wing realized that if they imported more workers, it would be cheaper for them. They'd make more money. Yeah, because think about it. There are 100 workers for, 100 positions. And so you have to pay them X, right? But all of a sudden you import 50 more workers from Honduras or 50 more workers from Syria or wherever. It doesn't really matter. You import more workers and what happens? You lower the cost of labor. Yeah, because before you had 100 workers, but now you have the possibility of 150 workers. So you tell everybody, hey, before I was going to pay you X, but now I'm going to pay you Y. Y being a lot less than X. Of course, that's what you do. And so what do you do as a capitalist, as a person, as a business owner or whatnot? You encourage more foreign workers to come in so as to lower your labor costs. And if you have to spout some nonsense about diversity and inclusiveness and all the rest of it so that more workers come in, fine, you will. You'll say whatever is necessary to bring down the cost of labor, because every time there's one more worker in the available pool of workers, it means that you make more money, more profits, because the cost of labor goes down. That's what's going on. And of course, you who are a capitalist who wants to make money, sure, bring in all the workers possible. Oh, and this right-wing candidate is advocating bringing in more workers, but this one is not. This one is like a cultural conservative. He wants to preserve the country, but this one wants to bring in a whole bunch of Mexicans so I can lower the price of labor and therefore me make more money. I'll back this guy. This guy who's all about tolerance and inclusivity and bringing in more cheap labor. Of course I'm going to back him. And so that's what happened. The left-wing politicians were all in favor of inclusivity and diversity and tolerance and all this nonsense, all this United Colors of Benetton Kumbaya bullshit in order to bring in more voters. And the right-wing politicians were in favor of exactly the same thing so that their corporate masters would have cheaper labor. And so that's how the politicians on both the left and the right want more foreigners in your country who will make your wages go down and who will vote against your best interests, and who will create a whole bunch of social problems because, of course, when you have an ethnically diverse community, you have more crime. You do. You have more crime and you have less trustworthiness. And that's a fact. This isn't me saying stuff. This is scientifically proven. Go look it up. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look it up. Google it. Diverse cultures have far lower trustworthiness because they view each other as strangers, as foreigners, and they don't necessarily like one another. Oh no, of course they don't. Because the differences of opinion, the biases, the racism that all these different groups had in the old country, they brought to the new country. And of course they expressed these prejudices and bigotries and whatnot. And so you have all kinds of social unrest, as we are seeing now, aren't we? Yeah. We are seeing all kinds of rioting going on in the Western democracies. And what's going on? What are the politicians doing? Oh, they're doing nothing at all. Okay? And in some cases, they're encouraging it because they realize that by encouraging it, they actually get more power. And so you have to understand the politicians are actively working against you. This is a fact. You have to understand that these politicians, they don't want what's best for the population of the country. They just want what's best for themselves. And with more immigration of foreign people who are not assimilating, that's the key issue. They are not assimilating. And in point of fact, at least the left does not want them to assimilate so as to maintain these voting blocks that will support them politically. Well, then you're going to have more and more social unrest. The problems that we are currently having, the rioting and whatnot that's going on, it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. Because so long as people are not encouraged to assimilate, so long as people are encouraged to hold on to their culture, hold on to their ancient hatreds of one another, because many of these people hate each other, so long as that continues, you will have no peace in the Western democracies. And you're going to start to see how the Western democracies decay and collapse because of this. Understand, the politicians hate you. And they have good reasons to hate you because it is in their benefit to hate you. And the way things are organized, in a practical sense, realistically, there is nothing to be done. Hi guys, thank you so much for supporting me as always. I so appreciate it. I hope that you're enjoying the videos that I'm producing here on Patreon. And remember, if you're not a member, please join the weekly webinar tier where we do these very fun discussions every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. The discussions run 2 to 3 hours and we talk about different things, and it's a call-in show. So have your mic plugged in and properly configured so you can talk live and in person, because I for one really enjoy it and I hope you do too. So thank you so much once again for your support, and I'll catch you next time.